All right,
Okay.
folks are starting to come in the room now.
Welcome everyone on this wonderful November evening before the big rain comes. So hope you're all safe and cozy at home. And not driving in your car, because we might do a little bit of mindfulness meditation. But if you are, you can just pull to the side when we get to that point. I'll give you a warning. So welcome. So this is our 6th year of our Empowering Patients Public Health Education Program, where the family docs in Burnaby want to share you more objective information that you get from the internet or from television or even on the radio, because everyone else is trying to sell you something, but we're just trying to sell you self-care. These are the things that your family doctor wants to share with you, but sometimes there's not a lot of time, especially when we're dealing with a number of problems and the things that kind of become frontline in our lives, in your lives. Sometimes we forget about looking at the basics of self-care. So that's what it's all about, giving you the information you need, but telling you how you can find supports in the community in Burnaby and beyond, and giving you tips on how to relate to physicians, other healthcare providers, how to be your own advocate, and where to get extra help. And a lot of education on the basics of really common chronic conditions like high blood pressure, lung disease, heart disease, some information on medical ethics. But the topic today is emotional wellness. So I don't call it mental health because emotional wellness is part of our overall health or well-being. And a lot of people, when they think about healthcare or they think about mental health, they're thinking more about illness and pathology. And we'll talk about when you do need extra professional help for certain conditions and what to look out for and where to find that. But it's really about maintaining your wellness, body, mind, and spirit. So this is a nice relaxing place that I go to almost every day, Central Park by the duck pond. I like to ride my bike through there. So I'll get going with our first slide. So brought to you by the Burnaby Division of Family Practice, which is a nonprofit whose members are the family doctors in Burnaby that look after patients in Burnaby and beyond, because a lot of my patients live all over the Lower Mainland, including Vancouver Island and Kelowna, because we have our favorite patients and they have their favorite doctors they like to hang on, because that relationship, a trusting relationship, is so important for both sides. And if you want to check our website, it's divisionsbc.ca/Burnaby, where you'll find a lot about community resources, including our Empowering Patients talks. And all of our recent talks have been on video, and Leona has kindly put them all online so you can see our previous talks. This will probably be online within a couple of weeks in case you want to see a rerun, just in case there's nothing new on Netflix or Disney Plus.
It'll be up there tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic. And I'd like to thank Leona, who's really the backbone and foundation of Empowering Patients. So I wouldn't be here without Leona's kind and gentle assistance and her patience with everyone in the public and connecting with us. So why are we here? It's a big philosophical question. I really think it's the circle of caring. And I think about my mom, how she cared a lot about her family, but her circle of love kind of expanded to her friends and to our church community, and then the community abroad that she connected with. And I think we all have this expanding circle of caring. And sometimes we get stuck in our own self-interest, our own family, but that's where we learn to love. And we learn to share things with friends and connect and recognize that we're not alone. So that's a big message, especially when we're suffering from a lot of stress, when we're suffering from anxiety or depression. Sometimes we feel that we're all alone. But you're not alone. You're part of a community, and we're here to support you as well. And as a family doctor, we definitely care about our patients. It's family practice because we almost think of our patients as our own family. So I have a golden rule in medicine that we actually have hidden away from the patients, but it's actually at my medical office assistant's front desk that reminds everyone on the inside that here we treat every patient like a family or a best friend and give them the same level of care we would want for ourselves and for our loved ones. But as family docs, as our division has demonstrated, we also care about our community. And together, all of us are looking after the future of our community, not just our children, but our elders. And what you can do is share what you learned today that's useful with the people that you care about the most. So we care about our patients and we care about our community. So today I'll just give you a really brief introduction to the 4 foundations of self-care, which is kind of the concept behind our Empowering Patients program. We'll talk about emotional health and why it's so important and why it's a big part of what I do in family practice. Even though most people think of seeing the doctor for physical things, emotional issues underlie everything. And to be motivated to look after ourselves physically, we need to have a good positive attitude and lots of support and motivation. We'll talk about recognizing anxiety and mood disorders and which conditions need help. And then for all of us, recognizing and managing stress, which we all have at different levels. Because it's tough. It's tough to be a human being. It's tough because there's so many unpredictable things that come up. We all will get older. We all will have accidents and illnesses, and we'll have losses and difficulties with work or school at some point. So we all need a helping hand, and we need these key emotional health skills that I'll spend quite a bit of time with to talk about these key skills that I use, share with my patients, share with my kids, and I hope you can share and practice yourselves with the people that matter to you, just to deal with the tough job of being a human being in this world. So what is healthcare? I think of it as being not just the cute things that you see on Grey's Anatomy or on the news, but a lot of it, 80% is in the community and chronic care and just managing our chronic conditions. But you might think that's just family doctors, nurse practitioners, people in the community that manage most of your healthcare. But the person that's most responsible is you, of course. But our job is here to support you in living your best life and achieving your goals. So I say that real healthcare is self-care. That the best predictor of your future health are the habits you practice every day. And I hope to teach you some new emotional well-being habits that you can integrate and practice every day as well. So I call the 4 foundations of self-care are what you eat, like a healthy diet, and avoiding the things that make us unhealthy, like smoking. What do you do? That includes physical activity, exercise, and being active every day, even if it's in the daily chores and work that you do. And also balanced by healthy rest throughout the day and sleeping. The 3rd foundation is how you feel, the big topic today, emotional well-being. And the topic of next Thursday, hope you can sign up for that too, is healthy relationships, how we connect. So I'll be able to give some practical tips I've learned from over 31 years of marriage and being a dad and being a physician and just living life with others, and some good tips on how to improve our relationships and foster and pay enough attention to them. So these are all the topics of the Empowering Patients program. So don't miss the next one next week on healthy relationships, but you can see the variety of topics that you can look at. All our previous presentations have the slideshows up on our website, divisionsbc.ca/Burnaby under Empowering Patients. And as Leona said, a variety of our videos from the past year, including this one within a day or so. So you can just look at our website, look under Empowering Patients on this page. So how do you define emotional wellness? Is it happiness? A lot of people equate that with just feeling good and being happy, like you won the lottery or you just got married or you met someone new. Is it peace? Being able to be at peace within, no matter what's going on around you? Or is it the absence of severe anxiety or depression? I like to define it as a number of things: having a deep sense of meaning and purpose in your everyday life, an abiding sense of peace, regardless of what's going around you, the ability to manage the stress and transitions, which is part of every one of our lives, especially during the pandemic, and awareness of our thoughts and feelings, and of course, the ability to manage them. And I'll give you some strategies on how I do it and what I teach to my patients. Now, emotional health matters because depression is a major cause of missing work, missing school, and disability. In fact, I would say of the patients I see every day, at least a third have emotional health issues as well. And much of the time, at least a third of the time, when someone needs to be absent from work for a long period of time, it's related to relationships, burnout at work, or extreme anxiety or depression. Anxiety is important because it holds us back from doing what we need to do, from moving forward, for reaching out to other people, from giving our best to the world. And I really feel that every one of us has a unique gift to the world, but sometimes anxiety or depression can hold us back from doing that. And emotions obviously influence our behavior. So when we're angry, we regress and we also aggress. We're more likely to get into arguments or to be really abrupt and not be careful in what we do and what we say. And when we're depressed, like you are here, we withdraw. And when we're anxious, like rabbit, we freeze, we don't act. And our emotions affect our relationships. They shade our thinking. When we're anxious, we overestimate the danger or the challenge we have in front of us, and we underestimate our ability to manage. So strong emotions kind of hijack our brain. And I have an illustration to explain how that happens. And when we're depressed, we start thinking negatively about ourselves, our situation, and the future. It really is like a cloud that really fogs our vision. So I'll talk about anxiety disorders. So we all have anxiety, but it's considered a disorder if it's having a significant impact on how you're functioning at home, at work, or at school. And some common anxiety disorders include generalized anxiety, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, social anxiety, and phobias. So I'll give you kind of an idea of what each of these is. And if you think you might be having a problem with that, do reach out to a healthcare practitioner, including your family doctor. There are a lot of resources in our Burnaby community to hook you up with some counseling, even if you don't have extended medical coverage from work or with school. So generalized anxiety is excessive worry about pretty well everything. We tend to ruminate about things we've done, worrying about the future or things going wrong, worrying about the worst things and catastrophizing about worst case scenarios. And they could really paralyze our thinking. So this is the statue of the thinker, but when we suffer from generalized anxiety, we ruminate and prevents us from acting. It can be paralyzing. Panic disorder is actually recurrent panic attacks. We all get panic attacks at some time in our life. And the symptoms can include almost like having an asthma attack or a heart attack. Like you might have chest pain or pressure, a racing heart, sweating, stomach upset, heartburn, diarrhea, or constipation. Because our nervous system, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system that controls these involuntary systems of the body, can be overridden by strong emotion as well. And we do a lot of investigations of all these symptoms, and they all require some investigation just to make sure it isn't a heart attack or a lung problem or a serious ulcer. But after we do a careful history, careful examination, sometimes it is just a panic disorder or panic attack. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a specific type of anxiety disorder where we have either intrusive, repetitive thoughts that we can't get out of our head, or we have this recurrent compulsion or the urge to perform a certain act over and over again, like hand washing. So we are all appropriately hand washing during the pandemic, but people with obsessive compulsive disorder started long before the pandemic, or their OCD may be feeling a lot worse with all the stress of the pandemic itself, and washing their hands until the skin is chapped, or washing floors and cleaning the home until the linoleum is peeling off, or checking the lock repeated times, even though you know you've locked it already. So these type of behaviors, if they really get in the way of you getting on with your life or cause you distress, may be obsessive compulsive disorder. So you should seek some help with a healthcare provider for extra assistance. Social anxiety could be seen as extreme shyness. It's excessive anxiety in specific social situations, such as public speaking, doing an interview, applying to a new job, talking to an authority figure like a teacher or your boss. Some people feel super anxious just going shopping, although most of us do it just to relax. So social anxiety, I suffered a lot from this when I was growing up. And I couldn't imagine that I'd feel comfortable talking in front of large groups, which I've been doing for the past 30 years. So it just goes to show that if you have any of these conditions, or you do suffer from a lot of anxiety, you can change how you feel. And it's not just with medication you can. I did it just with doing a lot of meditation, self-hypnosis, and my own self-cognitive behavioral therapy without having to see a therapist. And I learned myself, what I try to teach my patients, that we have the ability to change how we think and choose how we think and change how we feel. Phobias are very specific anxiety conditions. And it's an extreme specific fear, like a fear of spiders, a fear of heights, or claustrophobia, a fear of being in enclosed places. So there's some very effective methods for treating this, so you don't have to keep on avoiding these things that are sometimes part of our everyday life. Now, the other type of condition are mood disorders, and probably the most familiar to all of us is depression. But if none of us has experience with people that have had depression, you may think of it as just the blues, like when something bad happens to us or we have the blues for one day. We all get sad at different times, often with good and bad conditions or arguments. But people with clinical depression find it really hard to change how they feel. They can't just snap out of it. So that's why it requires a lot of understanding from family members and friends who don't understand why their friend doesn't do the things they need to do to get out of their depression, because it's not all that easy. And when it's a clinical depression, we all need extra help. And bipolar disorder is a particular type of mood disorder that includes depression, but includes conditions called mania or hypomania. So depression has physical, cognitive, and emotional symptoms. And some of the physical symptoms can be mistaken for anemia or an underactive thyroid, because the physical symptoms are being really slowed down, being fatigued, a change in your sleep pattern. Usually it's insomnia, but sometimes it's needing to sleep all the time, or a big change in your appetite, usually a decrease in your appetite. But of course, if you have these physical symptoms going on for some time, it's important to rule out other medical conditions. So if you have any of these that are prolonged or significant, do talk to a healthcare professional and don't just write it off to depression. The cognitive symptoms of depression include not concentrating as well, being absent-minded or forgetful. In fact, a lot of people with depression might think that they have Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And we call that pseudo-dementia, where they actually don't have any lasting cognitive problems, but it's actually a symptom of depression. Also, if we're really depressed, we might be thinking about death and even suicide or self-harm. And we would tend to blame ourselves and feel guilty quite inappropriately. And it's hard to shake that all by itself. So if you have these types of thoughts or know someone that does, we have some links for some ways to find some help. But do talk to a professional in healthcare or psychology. And the mood symptoms are kind of familiar to us: feeling sad or even hopeless, not enjoying things as much as we normally do, and losing motivation for everyday life, or even taking a shower or going out and meeting friends that usually make us feel better. Now, bipolar disorder includes depressions, episodes of depression for a period of time, but it also includes periods of mania or hypomania. So these latter two things are a heightened mood, like feeling really good, like really, really good. We call it euphoric, like top of the world, as if you won the lottery or met someone really, really new that you fell in love with. Having a little bit too much energy, like so much that you don't need to sleep at all. And your mind could be kind of shifted towards overconfidence and impaired judgment. So this is when we would spend way too much money or sign up for a whole bunch of courses that we'd never be able to complete, or engage in a lot of things we normally, more reckless things like gambling or spending or doing risky behaviors with other people or ourselves. Usually people feel really good when they're manic or hypomanic, so they usually don't come and complain to the doctor. And sometimes we only uncover it when we're kind of talking to someone in the depressive episodes and asking if there were periods where they felt actually totally opposite, even better than normal. So it's important to recognize this and to seek some help, because it often requires a combination of medication and extensive counseling so that you can get the help you need. Psychotic symptoms are a totally different category from the mood and anxiety disorders. You have impaired reality testing, having difficulty to determine what's real and what's not real. Having delusions, which are fixed false beliefs, and hallucinations, seeing or hearing things like illusions, auditory or visual, things that are not there, like other people that you know are not there, or voices of people you know who are not there. And another form of psychotic symptoms are disorganized behavior, where you're not dressing properly, not washing, showering, or brushing your teeth every day. So the classical example of psychotic conditions is schizophrenia, which usually appears at a young age, in our teens or in our 20s. But psychotic conditions can arise at any time. So here are a few links for where you can find some help. There are courses and resources at the Canadian Mental Health Association, and that's the website. If you need to see a psychiatrist or professional healthcare provider, there's Burnaby Mental Health. It's located in a section of Burnaby Hospital. So you can access them through the Fraser Health website or through this number. And for counseling, especially with family and children, that's Camry Child and Family Services in the Metrotown area on Imperial Street. So here's their website and their phone numbers as well. I also created a special handout for today's session, and Leona can give you the link, but it's also going to be on our website, or Empowering Patients website, for resources for this talk. Anxiety BC has become Anxiety Canada. So they'll be updated on the website because they did so well here. It's a nonprofit that provides a lot of educational resources, links to cognitive therapy courses, and a great app that you can download on your iPad or on your phone for managing anxiety. And the Mood Disorders Association of BC also has support groups and wellness programs. SAFER is an education and support group that provides some counseling and urgent care if you or someone you know has some serious suicidal thoughts or have attempted suicide. So it's support for friends and family members, as well as those that are suffering from these thoughts and feelings. So we really want you to be safe. So this is the hotline for thoughts of suicide or support for someone you know that might be having them. So this is something we all suffer from different times, stress. In fact, stress really keeps us going. So good stress is called eustress, EUSTRESS. So that's the stress that keeps us going, keeps us motivated. Without any stress at all, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. But when the challenge of our work or our lives is not in balance with our resources, our abilities, and our time, then we have this problem. So if your job or your life is just not stimulating at all, and you can do much better or do much more, you're just going to be bored. But when you hit that sweet spot where the challenges of what you have to manage perfectly matches what your ability to do is and your time and resources, you're in that special spot of flow, which is a sense of real well-being. But rarely are we in that perfect match all the time. And these days, a lot of people are overworked at school and at home and in the workplace. And the challenges of what we need to deal with far outweighs our abilities, including our time and the resources and support we have from others. That condition leads to stress, and we start feeling helpless, and we start feeling anxious with that type of feeling and environment. If it goes on too long and things get worse, we start feeling burnt out, depressed, and hopeless. And if we leave it too long, then you end up having to leave work or quit school or needing to get some extra help, medication or counseling. So I'd like you just to reflect now and thinking about the last week. Where have you been? Have the demands of your life been matching your ability to meet them? Just in case you can't tell if you're stressed, I'm just going to go over some of the physical, emotional, cognitive, like thinking and stress behaviors that we might have when we're feeling overly stressed. So the physical symptoms can mimic a lot of the things that are physical things that we come to the doctor with. And a lot of patients, once they come with symptoms like difficulty sleeping or headaches, changes in their bowel movements, muscle tension, aches and pains, and heartburn or diarrhea, or breathing more rapidly, we do a careful examination and history just to make sure we've uncovered physical causes. But sometimes it turns out it's caused by stress. We don't want you to ignore these symptoms and not see a physician just thinking that it's stress alone. So do check them out to make sure there's no underlying condition. The emotional symptoms of stress can be anything ranging from extreme anxiety or feeling hyper and rushed, feeling jittery, feeling helpless or hopeless or numb. So a wide range of symptoms from too much stress. We all kind of react in different ways. When we're under stress, we don't think the same. We might be worrying too much. We might see even more of the negative than we normally see. And we might get stuck ruminating, replaying in a real negative way. We might feel sorry for ourselves, or blame other people more. And we might start thinking more catastrophically about the worst thing that can happen. And people do a variety of different things when they're stressed. Some of us eat too much, some of us eat too little. A lot of us will feel slowed down, but some will feel really hyper and rush around. Some people get more aggressive in their driving and their relationships, and others will use chemical coping by drinking or abusing other drugs. Some people just lie around and do nothing. Other people use exercise and over-exercise and get injured. And then some people just put off things, especially the more challenging things, and procrastinate. So we all have our own signature ways of managing stress. And of course, stress affects our relationships. We'll probably be a little bit more sensitive, read more things into our conversations. We might be less affectionate or caring to our loved ones and less respectful of our friends. We might be more defensive or sensitive or more aggressive. So this weekend, sit down with a friend or trusted partner and just go over these stress symptoms and just to see where you are falling in this stress continuum. So a real key thing that we know in psychology is your sense of control in the situation. And the greater your sense of control, the less likely you will feel stressed and anxious and depressed. So if you feel you've lost a lot of control, it's really important to recognize those things that you can control. How can you change things? And if you can't change things, what do you have to accept? And what things are you able to change for the better? So think about what stressors you can reduce, be it at work or at school, in your home or in your social life. There's an 80-20 rule for everything. So in many cases, 20% of our reaction to a situation is due to the facts of the situation. And 80% of our reaction might arise from what we're bringing to it, how we're thinking about the situation, our past experiences, and how we're thinking about our present and thinking about ourselves. So I'm hoping that if you're suffering from a lot of stress or a difficult situation, that by the end of the talk, you'll be able to take a step back and talk to someone that you trust and look at those aspects of the situation that you can change and those aspects of your own thinking and behavior that you can change for the better. And we can rewrite our story because whether or not you know it or not, we're constantly creating this not too accurate story of our lives. Every one of us does it. When we're kind of daydreaming or ruminating, We're conceptualizing the present, the facts in the world with the interpretation of our life story that we're constantly rewriting. But if we don't pay too much attention to it, we actually come up with a lot of negative self-beliefs and negative beliefs about the world and other people. So in a nutshell, to manage stress, look at where you have control. Identify the sources of the stress. Ask yourself, are you reacting in proportion to the stress? Recognize those aspects that we can change or control, but accept those things we can't control right now. Recognize your choices, and that will give you a little bit less stress and a sense of empowerment. It's always good to kind of reflect on your whole life and your values, that what do you want to achieve at the end of your life? How would you like to be remembered? And are you living according to those values? The daily management of stress sounds so simple because all of us that are parents say these things to our kids, but we ought all to be good parents to ourselves. Number one, we need to go out and play and have a regular exercise routine. Even as simple as going for a relaxing walk every day, rain or shine, with bright clothes and umbrella. Don't skip your meals, even if you're feeling depressed and you've lost your appetite. It's really important to have that nutrition because that'll give your body some energy and is good for your overall health. So healthy meals like fresh fruit and vegetables and healthy proteins. And go to bed, get enough sleep and take regular breaks. And when you need to, go to the doctor. See your own family doctor when it's appropriate. And you do know that even during the pandemic, we've still been seeing and communicating with our patients on phone or video and in person when it's required. So don't hesitate to contact your doctor as you would before the pandemic. And then it'll be a combination of telephone, video, as well as in-person visits when we require a physical examination. Express your emotions with those that are close to you. Even I have a support group. I have 2 colleagues that are doctors. One's another family doctor that I've known since just after medical school, and another is a colleague who's a specialist. And we meet up periodically, either virtually, and I think we have something coming up this Saturday. We're going to be meeting at Tim Hortons and just catching up on how we're managing with the stress of practicing during the pandemic and checking in with each other. And we know that everything we talk about at Tim's stays at Tim's, but we are there to give honest feedback and just to listen to one another. We all need that. And of course, live in accord with your values, as I mentioned. So Gandhi said, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are aligned and in harmony. So I'll give you a brief preview of next week, our talk on healthy relationships. We need to attend to our relationships because that's fundamental to our emotional well-being and our ultimate happiness. Because if you don't pay attention to whatever's going on in your life, school or work or other responsibilities, that will consume as much as you allow it to. But if we don't schedule time with the people we love, even though that's the most important thing in your life, other people won't recognize that. So for all your relationships to thrive, you must attend to them and dedicate the time and the effort. This isn't my wedding invitation, but we had the same thing on our wedding invitation. Today I will marry my best friend. So you've probably seen that on lots of invitations. But if people have a divorce party, the invitation probably say, today I divorced my worst enemy. So it's kind of puzzling how we can go from this best friends to worst enemies. But it's a slow, gradual process of neglect, not paying enough attention and working together. So to nurture your most important relationships, you have to foster emotional intimacy. And having a habit of checking in with each other every day, just to check on how you're feeling and how was your day. The wrong way to word it is, what did you do today? Show your affection. So express your positive feelings. And remember that we all speak a different language of love. So it depends on how we're brought up. So my wife gave me this book, The 5 Languages of Love by Gary Chapman. So it was stuffed into my stocking about 10 years ago. But I actually recommend it to everyone that's married. And I actually cover this in my prenatal class with my pregnant patients so that they attend to their relationship, because kids tend to take up all our energy and time after the baby is born. So some of us like to really hear the words "I love you" and other words of affirmation and compliments and senses of appreciation expressed in words. Others really want that quality of time. Others actually want gifts of affection, like flowers or chocolates or new things to show your affection. And others appreciate acts of service, not just helping around the house, but kind things you'll do for the other person, like washing their car or making dinner for them, and just making their lives easy any way you can. And physical touch is really important to most, but not to everyone. So you might be married for 20 years, but not actually sit down and recognize which way your loved one needs to feel loved and which ways they're expressing love. I think it's a real shame when I have two patients in a couple that really love each other, but they're just expressing it in different languages. One might feel that he's showing his affection by working long hours, earning lots of money so that they can go on vacations or have nice presents and nice appliances at home. But their loved one might feel neglected if they're not spending that quality of time every day together. Other people might need to feel that physical touch and a close physical relationship, while others will really want to hear the words "I love you" and want to be spoken to in a kind way rather than a harsh way. So check it out with your loved ones and just ask yourself how you like to feel loved and how you're expressing love and how you might even modify or expand your expression of love to the people that you care about. And of course, schedule regular dates. Commit your time to what matters most. Don't wait till there's time, because before you know it, decades will pass. You have to make time. And we need to communicate in a healthy way. So take a breath and let anger cool before you react, and acknowledge the other feelings and points of view. So even grown-ups need to have kind of a timeout as well. So, and express how you feel without blaming. It's better to say how you feel rather than "you made me feel this way," because it comes on a different way and becomes a competition or an attack. And when things get stale, have an affair, but only with your own partner. It's way cheaper than a real affair and much safer. So leave little love letters for each other in your lunch boxes or bags, and try to sneak in some text messaging during the day, or maybe even a coffee or a lunch date during the work week. Emotions are not the enemy. Even though we're talking about managing and controlling difficult emotions, emotions are part of being human. They've really helped us survive. So thank goodness we had anxious ancestors that got angry and were active. And even there's value in depression. Without desire, of course, humans wouldn't reproduce. And without sadness, we wouldn't avoid the things that cause us pain. Without anger, we wouldn't defend ourselves or our loved ones. And without anxiety, we'd never plan or sound an alarm or run away from danger. This is what I was talking about, the ability for us to manage our emotions and our thoughts. So it's a simplification. Sometimes people call this the triune brain, or brain 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So we sometimes think of the instinctual brain as like our dinosaur brains, just hunger, the need for shelter and warmth, satisfying our physical desires. And above that is the limbic brain in the mammals, where there's emotions like love, affection, belonging, fear, anger. And we have the neocortex that developed in the primates. And the human neocortex is where mindfulness, managing our thoughts, and visualization can be used to control our thoughts and to control our emotions. So we'll be talking about engaging brain 3.0, your ability to kind of take a step back, change your perspective, recognize your thoughts and feelings, and then modify those thoughts and feelings so that they work better for your situation. So most people didn't realize that we have this ability to change the way we think and feel. When we're in the heat of the moment, as you know, with any toddler, a toddler will act like a baby when they're angry and upset and throwing a tantrum. But likewise, as adults, we sometimes act as children too when we're overwhelmed with anger or depression or severe anxiety. So the second emotional health skill beyond self-care and the management of stress is some form of meditative practice. So I use meditation every day and throughout the day to calm my mind, to center my thoughts, to reflect on my life, and to connect with my values. In fact, I keep a kind of a reminder here that I actually have right at my workstation every day. I don't have to look at it too often because I kind of do this kind of naturally, so that when I'm finished with one patient and before I go to the next, I make sure that I'm centered and mindful so that I can really attend to the patient's concerns and problems and be focused on that. So I think of 7 questions and 7 mantras throughout the day. So the first question is, what am I feeling? And after reflecting on how I'm feeling for the moment, I just center with feeling my breath. My second question is, what am I thinking? And my response or mantra is to think on peace. The next question is, what am I doing? And whatever I'm doing, I'm just realigning and walking in grace. What am I speaking? I make sure that I'm being mindful in what I'm speaking and I speak the truth. And then from that perspective, what do I see? I see beauty in the people around me and in my situation. And then how am I relating? How am I expressing love? And finally, who am I? And in that, I experience the wonder of just being a part of relationships with other people and part of the living world. So these are things that I kind of reflect back, kind of as a compass as I'm going through a busy day, because no matter what the interruptions are or the reactions of patients to difficult situations, trying to recenter so I can be present. And in particular, I use mindfulness kind of to keep the emotions in check. So strong emotions like anger, frustration, or even stress, you can think of as a meditation gong or a chime that's going to be sounded so that we can stop before we react, reflect on what am I feeling, thinking, saying, and doing. It's like checking a map rather than following a GPS. So knowing where the compass is, knowing what your true north is, and to find your place on the path. It's also like being on autopilot, so that planes are often veering off correction and we need to recorrect, checking the map and staying on course. So meditation throughout the day, and in particular mindfulness, can help us redirect and stay intent and stay on track with our values. In particular, I like to frame each day with thankfulness. That means starting the first thing in the morning is to say a prayer of gratitude. And of course, the first person I think of is my wife beside me. Whether or not she's snoring or had been snoring during the night, I think of all the wonderful things she does for our family and what she does for me and how important she is. And I think about my children and my patients and my colleagues and all the wonderful people that I work with and all the things that we normally would take for granted. If you start your day looking for things to be thankful for, it will kind of shape and mold how you think throughout the day. Now, mindfulness is more than just meditation. It's probably seen as a meditation for managing stress and pain and depression. And it's really been brought to the Western world by Jon Kabat-Zinn in the 60s and 70s. And although it is of Buddhist origin and it's been popularized by Thich Nhat Hanh and the Dalai Lama, it's used by many psychologists, physicians, and healthcare providers because it is really evidence-based for a variety of conditions and for managing stress. And there's a psychologist, not our man in motion, Rick Hansen, who actually talks about the scientific basis for these practices. So you can look at Hardwiring Happiness or Buddha's Brain, the Practical Neuroscience of Happiness, Love, and Wisdom, if you want to get more background on that. And although we think of it simply as being in the present, like when you're eating your meal, paying attention to the texture and the taste and the sound of eating your food in a nice, slow, easy way. It is focusing on our breath, our physical sensations, but with time we learn to experience that all things beyond physical sensation, sounds and sights and smells come and go, and we can experience them without judgment or identification. And then we branch that out to thoughts and feelings. Rather than saying, I'm angry, we're recognizing the physical sensation, the emotional and cognitive sensations of feeling anger or anxiety or depression coming on. And we notice how it can change and how we can just experience it without identifying with it. So rather than saying, I'm sad or I'm angry, I might just reflect on these are the feelings of anger or the feelings of sadness or the feeling of anxiety in my body without identifying with them or trying to control them, but just getting some space and being mindful. It takes some practice to get used to it, but with practice, we actually can transform our minds using that brain 3.0, that prefrontal cortex that we have as humans so that we can reflect on what we're thinking and feeling and modify them. So when we're mindful, we're not carried away or lost in thought, running away with our emotions and being driven by anger or anxiety or a low mood, or lost in a train of thought and not being attentive to the people right in front of you or what you should be attending on right now, which is being alive. And we recognize with the insight that much of our suffering comes from our reactions to whatever arises. And that we can lessen that by not reacting, by pushing away or clinging to things like desire or clinging or pushing away with anger or with fear. Shin Zen Young said that suffering is pain times resistance, that if we accept things, we have much less pain and suffering. And in mindfulness, we're not just being present and observing things, but we're fostering a sense of peace, that's equanimity, kind of emptying your ego and accepting that things will come and go, and many things beyond our control. And it doesn't make sense to get very angry or frustrated with things that are beyond our control, but recognize the positive things that we can do through positive intention. And we also nurture compassion and unconditional love towards all living beings, including ourselves, because we're much happier when we accept others and ourselves with compassion and without judgment. But all of this kind of goes against normal human nature, how our brains have evolved. And I'll be talking a little bit later about our negativity bias, how much our brains tend to focus on the negative and downplay the positive in ourselves and other people and in our situations. So I'd like to try a little mindfulness meditation if you're all up to it. So make yourself comfortable in your seat. And you're welcome to move or make yourself comfortable in any way. And I invite you to close your eyes so you can focus on your senses and pay careful attention to your breath without controlling it. It doesn't have to be fast or slow, but just breathe naturally. And just notice the sensations, wherever you might feel it. When you're breathing in, you may feel it in your chest or your throat or nose or in your belly. Just the sensations of breathing in and the sensations of breathing out, just at your own pace without trying to control it in any way. Now I invite you to turn your attention to the sounds around you, still with your eyes closed. Listen for sounds just coming into your awareness and consciousness. Sounds in the distance, and sounds that are nearby. And if your thoughts wander from what you're focusing on, gently turn your attention back to the sounds as they arise without labeling them or judging them, letting the sounds come and go into your awareness. Now turn your attention to the feelings in your body, those areas of your body that feel the pressure where you're sitting, the sensations in your feet, maybe in your socks or shoes, the weight of the floor. Attend to those areas in your body where you feel warmth and those areas that feel cooler. And you'll notice some areas of the body where there's more tension and areas with less tension. And you may notice areas of your body, maybe in your fingers, where you might feel tingling, just subtle sensations all by themselves. And return your attention again to your breath. Just those sensations of breathing in and breathing out. And knowing that anytime you need to take a mindful break throughout the day, you can allow yourself just to pause, get comfortable, and attend to just the sensation of breathing naturally. And in your own time, you can open your eyes, bright and alert again, and hopefully not fallen asleep. So we do notice that when we first try to be mindful in a meditation like that, it's kind of natural that we might get thoughts that pop into our mind. But with gentle compassion, we gently redirect our attention to whatever we choose to focus on in the present moment. The breath, the sounds, the sensations. And if you're able to do that, you would have noticed that suddenly things slow down and they're still. And with practice over time, you'll strengthen your ability to focus your attention. Because there's a psychological and neuropsychological principle that what we focus on, we amplify. And we reinforce both physiologically and cognitively. So if we're focused on difficult emotions, we tend to amplify them. And when we learn to redirect our focus, our awareness and concentration, we can strengthen positive states as well. And with time and practice, we learn to recognize that thoughts are being produced in our brain all the time. Our brains secrete thoughts, often without a lot of shame. And anxious thoughts pop out, catastrophic thoughts come out, really depressing thoughts sometimes pop in. But we can make ourselves miserable if we get lost in a train of thoughts and daydream and kind of create a false negative story of our situation, making it much worse than it might really be. So in meditation with mindfulness, we can learn to see our thoughts and feelings as something changing and transient that are like clouds or the weather. You are the mountain. Your consciousness, your awareness is the mountain. And these thoughts can come and go into your head. You can observe them, acknowledge them, accept them, but you can choose not to be carried away with them. You are the mountain. Another way of practicing mindfulness are focusing and concentrating on desired feelings and emotions rather than focusing on the more difficult emotions. So we don't want to ignore emotions, we acknowledge them, know that they're there, and be kind to them. But we also want to strengthen the opposite. So this is a useful meditation from traditional mindfulness called the loving kindness or unconditional love or metta meditation. And even though they seem to be just words, they have a way of inspiring the very emotion that they're talking about. So I'd like you to practice this on your own. May I be filled with loving kindness. That means unconditional love for myself and those around me, all living things. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers, and may you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I and you be well in body and mind, and may I and you be at ease and happy. You can visualize loved ones and neighbors and co-workers, and then eventually difficult people saying these same words. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body and mind, and may you be at ease and happy. And if you really visualize someone neutral or someone that you've had disagreements with these words, it has a way of reshaping and changing your relationship with them, even if they've done nothing different. And it's you just transforming your own mindset. The compassion meditation is similar. May you be held in compassion. May you be free of pain and sorrow. And may you be at peace. So I often say this meditation when I'm thinking about others and my patients that are suffering. Even when I'm going through my tasks and the computer's results and reports coming in for patients, I get about 200 a day, I instill this feeling of compassion, that they be well, that their pain and sorrow be eased, that they be at peace, that they be well. And it really shifts my own mindset and compassion for myself and for other people. Another way to foster gratitude, in addition to my prayer of thankfulness at the beginning and end of the day, is this traditional gratitude meditation. So with gratitude, I remember the people, animals, plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. And with gratitude, I remember the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. I offer my gratitude for the safety and well-being I've been given. I offer my gratitude for the blessings of this earth I've been given. I offer my gratitude for the measure of health I've been given. I offer my gratitude to the family and friends I've been given, for the community that I've been given, the teachings and lessons I've been given, and the life I have been given. So this reminds us of the many things that we take for granted. And then the cup suddenly is not half empty, but full and overflowing. And this is a meditation to foster the wish for joy for other people or for yourself. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase, and may you not be separated from great happiness. May your good fortune and causes of your joy and happiness increase. So we could do a dedicated meditation on each of these for 2 to 10 minutes, and just to foster these desirable feelings and perspectives in your daily life. This is the equanimity meditation. So a way to kind of recenter and be at peace. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my mind. May I be balanced and at peace. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all things with equanimity and balance. And may I be open and balanced and peaceful. Another way of just getting that mindful attitude and letting it stay throughout the day. I like to listen to podcasts by Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach and Joseph Goldstein. So these are lectures from meditation sessions and some guided meditations. So they're kind of great to listen to if you have time when you're getting ready in the morning. So it kind of sets the stage and gives you illustrations of how you can apply mindfulness to your everyday life. I think of the mindfulness habit to help us kind of self-correct and keep us from going off course throughout the day. Just like a plane has autopilot and self-correcting so that you stay on course and end up back in Vancouver rather than in Toronto. So the way to make it a habit is to practice it every day. So I'll offer you a couple of suggestions of what I do and what I've recommended to some of my patients as well. So it's great to start off with a morning ritual of mindfulness, and it could be a couple of minutes or 5 or 10 minutes, but it's well worth waking up 10 minutes early and to set the tone. And that's where you would just pay attention to your breath, attend to what you hear and how you feel physically, and focus your attention on what's going on in the present moment without judgment, but with full acceptance and compassion. And during the daytime, I schedule regular breaks. So I drink lots of water so that I have to go to the washroom at least after a couple hours. And I take a break regardless, even if it's for less than 2 minutes. And during those breaks, I'll either meditate on one of those 4 divine abodes: equanimity, joy, compassion, unconditional love. So when I'm taking my break, or I might use my Apple Watch that has a meditation app, and it just gives me one thing to focus on that's positive for 1 minute. So it's been shown that even 1 or 2 minutes of these little micro breaks of being mindful can be as effective as just that 20-minute meditation in the morning at the end of the day. But it helps us reset and check our bearings, like a rest stop when you're on the long road when the Coquihalla was intact. And you might choose to do some of the dedicated meditations reflecting on peace, joy, compassion, and love. Listen to those podcasts every day when you're doing your morning routine. And welcome the waits in everyday life. Like when you're waiting for someone to answer the phone, or waiting for the elevator or in the elevator, when you're waiting for the SkyTrain, when you're at a traffic light. These are all opportunities to stop and reflect on what we're thinking, doing, and feeling, and pay attention to the sensations of the breath and what you're doing if you're driving, and what you're doing if you're in conversation with another person. So welcome these waits and interruptions. And I welcome situations where strong emotions or even negative thoughts might seize my attention. I see those as meditation bells that ring and remind me, what am I thinking, doing, and feeling, just to realign. So actually welcoming them as a challenge to recenter. So think of adopting all or some of these habits tomorrow, beginning with practicing what we practice with attention to the breath or sound or sensations in the body in the present moment each morning before you get out of bed. And do a meditation of gratitude first thing in the morning to shape your perspective on the day. Schedule those breaks throughout the day when you're going to go to the washroom or have your breakfast, lunch, or snack anyway. Be mindful at those times. And dedicate some time towards those 4 positive experiences of peace, joy, compassion, and love. Take 10 minutes and listen to parts of the podcast. Welcome the waits that are going to come up anyway. And when strong emotions arise or negative thoughts, recognize them as a signal, a meditation bell. Just recenter and check what you're thinking, doing, and feeling. Tara Brach uses this acronym to deal with difficult experiences or situations or difficult thoughts. RAIN, recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture. So you recognize what you're feeling, thinking, and experiencing. I'm feeling some anger or anxiety or frustration. Accept that feeling, allow it to happen just as it is, without judging or clinging or pushing away. Reflect, investigate, reflect a little. What do you observe and note about these sensations? And ask yourself, is this a helpful way of feeling? Is it another way of looking at the situation? Is it helping how I'm feeling? And then finally, nurture with self-compassion. Don't identify with the thought or emotion. Just let it go. And recognize I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my feelings. So some tips on managing our thoughts. So as I mentioned, not only do our emotions shape our thinking, but our thoughts can shape our emotions, like a positive, virtuous cycle or a vicious cycle. When we're angry, we're going to be centered on our own needs and feeling hostility towards the other person. It'll shape how we talk and behave towards them and how we think about them. So these are examples of thought traps that every one of us falls into. So I'm going to guide you through them because you'll recognize them in ourselves. So fortune telling is the cognitive distortion or the thinking trap that we all fall into. It's when we assume we really know how things are going to turn out, like how this pandemic is going to turn out, or this new diagnosis that we have. And kind of thoughts that illustrate fortune telling are, I'll always feel this way and I'll never be able to manage these feelings. But in reality, none of us can see the future. And you can counter it with what you would probably tell your best friend or someone you cared about. I can't predict the future, but I can be ready for whatever may come. So none of us, unless you're a Vulcan, can really read minds, but some of us go about assuming that we really know what another person is thinking when they said or did something. I know why she hadn't called me, and she did that just to hurt me. But you can counter that by a more balanced thought, as you would tell a friend or loved one that was in the same situation thinking that way. I should give others the benefit of the doubt and maybe check things out with them. Overgeneralizing is when we make broad assumptions based on the facts, which are sometimes limited facts. For example, you can't trust anyone and they're all the same. And you can counter that by more balanced thoughts, as a trusted friend or a loved one would tell you. One rotten banana doesn't make the whole bunch bad, and other people are individuals just like me. Polarizing is black and white, good or bad, all or nothing type thinking. And often we think this way when we're really stressed, and then it makes us even more stressed and upset. Like the pandemic is a disaster. There's nothing good in this situation. Well, it is pretty bad, but my situation is not so bad. I have support that others don't. This challenge has brought out a lot of kindness from others. And we've kind of seen that with a lot of people coming together and us really valuing our relationships and checking in on our neighbors and seniors and our loved ones. And the Burnaby Division and our primary care network in Burnaby have really brought together a lot of resources to really help those most affected by the pandemic. The thinking trap of shooting is really being overly judgmental. He's not wearing his mask properly. I have to be perfect. And we can counter that with more compassionate thinking, as a good friend would reflect back to you. He may not have realized what he was doing. He's probably doing the best he can, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm good enough. Personalizing is that thinking trap where we take things too personally. Like he did that deliberately just to hurt me. And you can counter that with thinking, well, maybe he's just having a bad day and I should let that go. And catastrophizing is believing the worst things can happen. And that can really make us feel more depressed or more anxious. So I'm going to fail and I'll never be a success. This really is the end of the world. I'm going to get sick and die. And you can counter that by something more balanced, like I'll prepare for the worst, but I know it's not likely to happen. And I know how to stay well, and I know where to get help. And hopefully I've given you some resources so you know that you're not alone and each of us can get some help. And this is that negativity bias, disqualifying the positive, really downplaying the good things in a situation and really minimizing, really overemphasizing what's wrong. We all have this negativity bias where we need to see 5 positive things just to downplay and balance the one negative thing. And that's really important in relationships where it's easy to criticize the things that are irritating you about people that you're living with or working with. But if you complain about those too much and don't think of the 5 positive things that can counter that, it just makes you more miserable. And if you're just saying negative things to other people and not balancing it with 5 times more positive things, they will feel unhappy with the relationship and themselves. So an example is there's nothing good in the situation. So we need to balance that out, but by thoughts like I'm learning and I'm getting better, our family and community have really come together to help one another. And I appreciate my loved one, even if they didn't put a new roll of toilet paper in the washroom. So keep calm and review your cognitive distortions and don't believe everything you think, because our brains are organs that just constantly secrete thoughts, some true and some not so true. One way to reflect is when you're stuck in thoughts that are difficult is to use the THINK acronym. So is this thought true? Is this thought helpful? Does this thought inspire me or connected to my values? Is this thought meeting my needs? And is this thought kind? So this THINK acronym is really helpful for thinking before we put something on the internet, thinking before we say something that might be harmful or hurtful to other people. And it's a good way to kind of reflect on our feelings and opinions in a given situation. So reflect on the thoughts that are triggering the emotions, and is there another way of looking at that situation? And a good way to shift your perspective is to say, what would I say to a good friend or a loved one if they had these thoughts? And I would like you to treat yourself as you would a loved one. So here's some resources and books on cognitive therapy, all available in the Burnaby Public Library. And we also have the Bounce Back website. Either your family doctor or you can self-refer to do the Bounce Back course on cognitive therapy for anxiety or depression. Now, finally, the real key to emotional wellness is visualizing your goals. So we talked about looking after yourselves, being a good parent to yourself, and looking after your relationships as essential self-care. We talked about meditative practice, in particular mindfulness for recentering, connecting with your values and being in the present, where the only place we actually live is. And we've given some tips on cognitive therapy on managing our thoughts. And finally, visualizing your goals, because really what we focus on, we amplify. So some of you might remember the thesaurus that you used in elementary school. So unlike a dictionary, a thesaurus has words that mean the same thing, synonyms, and words that mean the opposite, antonyms. But you didn't know about the psychological basis of Roget's thesaurus. So Roget created a thesaurus because he was suffering from a lot of loss and depression. A couple of really close friends had passed away, and he wanted to feel better. So we tried to come up with words that meant the opposite of loneliness and sadness and depression, like connection and joy and happiness and peace. So it's useful when you are in a negative state to look at what your goals would be, which might be the very opposite of what you're experiencing. So there's a poster in my room that says, let's turn our problems into goals. I'm happy to deal with all the problems on my patients list, but at some point, not only are we problem solving, but we're solution creating. And with our own thoughts, instead of replaying the past or ruminating about the negative or worrying about the future, visualize a positive future. Because what we focus on, we magnify in our brains. That we call it the quantum Zeno effect in neuropsychology. What we focus on, we solidify and amplify in our minds and in reality. It's also called attention density. So really concentrated attention on a regular basis really solidifies new habits of thought, feeling, and intention. Another principle from a Canadian neuropsychologist, Donald Hibb, from the 1950s, is that neurons that fire together, wire together, meaning that our nervous system actually changes at any age. So if we practice new thoughts and new habits, such as meditation, reflecting on our thoughts, fostering loving kindness and compassion and joy in our lives, they will be the new ways that we're naturally thinking, just like a new habit, a new skill that will be there as long as we desire. So we can change old habits of thinking into new habits of thinking and being. So these repeated neural pathways really grow stronger over time. The connections between neurons become like a well-worn trail, reinforced by repetition. Otherwise, we create this false story where we actually are moving further away from what we really believe. So it's also useful for us to question our values and our core beliefs. Make sure they're aligned. Your goals are aligned with these. And if you've ever questioned where your core beliefs about yourself and others and life come from, often they're acquired unconsciously by habitual thoughts or exposure during childhood or experiences and how they're interpreted over time, often through our ruminations. And all of us have accepted incorrect beliefs about the world and other people and ourselves. And we have to recognize our life story can be told from many different angles. And I think the real goal in life is to expand and recreate our life stories in accord to our growing wisdom and knowledge. And our old beliefs, correct or incorrect, really shape our worldview. So common unquestioned assumptions and core beliefs that really shape those automatic thought distortions are limiting beliefs, such as I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve to be successful, or to be happy, or to be loved, or I am powerless. I have to be perfect to be loved. I can't trust anyone. Life is unfair. So all of us have some limiting beliefs that are just underneath the level of consciousness. But it's useful to kind of dig a little bit deeper and kind of ask if these resonate with you. And if they do, are they really working for you? Do they bring you closer to your ultimate goals of how you want to be, to live your life, and how do you want to be remembered and connect with others? And do they foster positive feelings, like that feeling of connection and being at ease and at peace? And do they inspire positive actions such as kindness and creativity and generosity? So let me offer some positive core beliefs. So this is what I've kind of evolved over time, that I'm a part of a greater whole, just as you are, and part of a family, and an important part and member of this community. That I and you have a unique positive potential, are gifts to the world, but we are dependent on every other person. Everyone matters. And I can make a positive difference as you can with actions great and small. We are continually growing, learning, and adapting to any change. Because all of us have this illusion of separateness and that life is a competition. And upon reflection, I've learned that the big problems of our society and the world will never be solved by people looking out for themselves. And we've really seen that during the pandemic. And the big lesson of the pandemic is that we are not separate, totally independent individuals. Our well-being is dependent on the well-being of everyone else. That we are really global citizens. What happens in one country affects every other country. What happens in one part of the community affects everyone in the community. When we realize our interdependence and our connection with the global community, with your neighbors and all life on this planet, we realize that this is part of the positive evolution of humanity and life. We see that just from the climate we've been experiencing, but it begins with each of us here today. So together, let's be the change that we wish to see. And remember, you have the ability to change how you respond and think about yourself and the challenges of the pandemic and your situation. And see yourself as an agent of positive change. Notice your sense of control in your own life, in your community, and in our world. You can engage with life and cope with change because that's the reality of who we are, the nature of life. There's nothing really to hold on to except our connection to one another. We have to appreciate what we have when we have it and recognize that every gift in our lives is not for us to hold forever. We have to love and appreciate others while we can and let go when we need to. We can accept what you cannot change, but accept responsibility to change in a positive way what you can. So we can be dynamically responsive to change and be up to anything together. And we can seek out the positive potential in one another and in the moment. So even though you might think that certain ways of thinking and behaving are hardwired and we can't get over our old bad habits, with effort and repetition, and I hope I've been able to show that to you today, can really transform our minds and our lives. This is how we adapt to our changing world in any challenge. But again, it begins with us. And we can all be agents of positive change in our life, and in our community and in the whole world. So let's be the change that we wish to see. So just a reminder, the next talks next week will be healthy relationships. In January, I'm going to go into a deep dive in using some real useful methods for transforming our bad habits of behavior, thought, or feeling into healthy ones. So just in time for the new year. And February will be what you should know about heart disease. And in March, making sense of our symptoms and screening tests that you might have missed during the pandemic. Again, we're here for each other and to support one another. And I do have time to answer any questions if Leona would kindly guide me through any questions or feedback from our audience.
Yeah, so I had a couple questions. One is from Craig. What is the difference between psychotic conditions and dementia, even early onset dementia at a younger age?
Well, dementia usually relates to difficulties with short-term memory, and then it could slowly decline in losing the ability to do things that we can do on our own, like getting up, getting changed, dressing. So it's a generalized cognitive decline that begins with loss of short-term memory. Psychosis is more hallucinations, but then that's different from sometimes elderly people or even younger people due to illness might be temporarily confused and seeing and feeling things like ants crawling or spiders crawling that aren't there, or seeing things on the ceiling in the hospital when they're feeling unwell. So that's delirium, which is just short lasting and usually due to a physical cause. or psychosis that doesn't always have an immediate obvious cause.
Okay, great. Well, Craig, hopefully that answers your question. I've got one here from Lucy. She said, hi, Dr. Wong, can people with low iron deficiency develop depression and anxiety or worsen with being diagnosed with panic disorders?
Yeah, because if you are anemic, your blood count's low, then your heart rate may be a little bit faster as well. So our resting heart rate is usually 60 to 100. But if someone's severely anemic, then their heart's going to be beating a bit faster, making up for less blood. It can make you feel tired, exhausted. So it can make you feel both depressed with less energy, but with a faster heart rate, it can make someone feel more anxious too. So it's always good to kind of get to the bottom of it and then rule out a physical cause like a thyroid or low iron or anemia before labeling it as panic or anxiety only.
Okay, great. Another one from Lucy is narcissistic personality part of a bipolar disorder?
No, so personality disorders, and I'm sure all of you have them in your family. So some of you might be looking forward to just a virtual get together, but there's one in any large office. Got one in mine as well, but he's not here right now. But in a personality disorder is not a psychotic disorder. It's not a mood or anxiety disorder. So personality disorder is in a different category altogether. And it's kind of an enduring way of relating to other people or to yourself in reality. So one personality disorder is narcissistic personality disorder, where people have an inflated sense of self-worth and put themselves before everyone else, and they feel entitled. There's lots of people with narcissistic traits, but it might not be a personality disorder. But usually with a personality disorder, it actually has effects on how they relate with other people and actually impedes things as well. There's other personality disorders like obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Is not like OCD itself, but it has some of the traits, paying particular attention to things. So obsessive compulsive personality would be a really good surgeon because they're always going to make sure that every suture is tied. They're going to make sure there's nothing bleeding before they close things up, and they're going to make sure there's no sponge left behind. So some of these personality traits are really useful for some professions, but they can cause a lot of stress for the individual or the people that live with them as well. So personality disorders are kind of a different category, and they don't generally respond to medication. But if someone has insight into knowing that they have an enduring difficulty relating to other people or in life, then they may have the insight to work with a psychologist to gradually change or adapt how they think and feel. And a lot of them are not a chemical imbalance, it's a life experience and how it was interpreted.
Okay, great. Any tips on how parents can help instill mindfulness and patience in their young children?
Definitely, actually, beginning with any of these practices. So there are versions of mindfulness books for kids. I think Tara Brock has one for kids as well. And they are teaching some mindfulness in schools as well. But one would be doing some of these meditations, but changing it to words that are meaningful to the children, knowing that these are the values of your family that you want to foster. Generosity, compassion to ourselves and to other people. Equanimity, so a sense of peace so that we don't react as quickly. And being a good parent that acknowledges how a child feels, because we know that if a child does something that's aggressive or has a tantrum, I always knew that if I listened to my son and daughter, if they were upset, behind the anger is usually sadness or frustration. So if you listen enough, the anger turns into little tears. And then if we listen enough and acknowledge it with our words till we get it right, then it takes the energy and the pain out of the emotion. So how we calm, acknowledge our children is how we teach them to practice it on themselves.
That's really great. That's really great. Thank you. How effective is somatic therapy for anxiety?
Well, I'm not too familiar with all the details of somatic therapy. I wonder if the audience member might elaborate on what they mean
Tammy,
by somatic therapy.
if you're available, if you'd like to unmute. But while we get Tammy on the line, Craig had another question with regards to going to a Canucks game. He was on our last talk, and he asked again from a public health perspective, would you now go to a Canucks game at Rogers Arena?
I would, because I know from patients that told me that when they went to Canucks game, people were not wearing masks and that people were closer than 6 feet. And even if everyone has been vaccinated, we don't know how many people are well beyond 6 months since their last vaccination. And I'm over 6 months since my last vaccination, so I wouldn't go to a Canucks game. Or if I did, then I would be wearing my gown, face shield, and N95. And I don't think I would enjoy it as much.
Fair
I'd feel
enough.
much more comfortable at home watching it on TV.
Good call, good call. We've got Tammy unmuted now, so she can expand on her question.
Hi, Dr. Wong. Yeah,
Hi, Tammy.
I'm loving your session here today. Have so many questions. I'm glad I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. Anyways, my question is because a lot of my anxiety becomes physical. So I've just recently become really looking at, someone told me somatic, how the body is trying to tell you something. So I'm wondering if there's, like if there's a healing to be done with that type of thing for the anxiety itself, if it transmits into a physical type feeling.
Well, it's very true. We actually feel our emotions physically, not just cognitively or emotionally. So it's mindfulness, I think, is the best approach, where you could be attuned to what you're feeling physically without getting carried away in the physical symptoms. So it's useful to recognize anxiety as it's being manifest as maybe gastrointestinal or respiratory or cardiac symptoms like our heart rate going up or tension in our muscles going up, to kind of recognize it early. And that's part of the mindful training. And then using that RAIN acronym, recognizing, accept, and allow, and then investigate a little bit with where's it coming from? What could have been the trigger? Was it triggered by a thought or a situation I'm responding to it? And how can I approach it compassionately to settle it down before it gets out of control? The worst thing would be to emphasize too much on a physical symptom such as pain, because what we focus on, we amplify. So it's also a principle of using mindfulness and cognitive therapy for chronic pain, that sometimes if we get too stuck in the pain, we actually make it worse. We reinforce the neural connections in the central nervous system in the brain and actually make the physical symptoms worse. So it is just that gentle play with mindfulness, using that RAIN acronym and reflecting enough so that, and also knowing that you can shift your attention. So if there's a really uncomfortable symptom, once we've acknowledged it and know where it's coming from, we could damper it down using compassion and shifting our attention to more reassuring and strengthening thoughts and sensations.
So you don't think that possibly the area of your body that's experiencing it is something is blocked there? Or do you think it's just that the anxiety just attacks, like if it's always in your heart, for example, like is there a deeper healing that needs to be done other than just mindfulness, do you think?
As long as we've checked out your heart, we know that we don't have to
Yeah, we
stay
know
too
that's
focused
good.
on
But
that. But that's a little bit less evidence-based medicine than mindfulness and CBT and the rest of medicine. So yeah, blockages other than coronary artery blockages.
well, not like that, but
yeah.
more like emotional blockages.
Yeah, so that's not an evidence-based approach. So it is kind of a philosophy and an approach, but it might, if it takes you away from using the other evidence-based tools that are really effective. I wouldn't spend too much time in one particular therapy that's emphasizing a kind of an alternative perspective that may not make you feel better or get you feeling better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we've answered all the questions. We had a note from John. He said he enjoyed the clear and skilled presentation of a large amount of information. It's from your medical school buddy, John.
Oh, well, thanks, John.
So we have some really lovely positive thoughts in here. So thank you, everybody. If we've covered all the questions, I think we're done.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking this time, because I do know there's new shows on Disney Plus and Netflix, but you can watch them later. Thanks for sharing your time with me. And thanks again, Leona, for making it all possible.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Just again, for those that haven't been a part of our talk, there is, when I end the session, there'll be a brief survey that pops up. So any feedback you can give us, by all means, feel free to share.
Is it possible to get a copy of this to listen to it again? Is it available?
It'll be on our website, probably by noon tomorrow. I'll make sure I upload. You'll be able to see the whole thing.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Leona, and thanks everyone.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great Christmas, but we'll see you next week, maybe.
See you next week. I'll be in Harrison next week, hopefully.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Right by the lake. We'll be doing the talk from the lake.
Oh, good. We'll have a great view. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.